Seniornicity. Connecting qualified service providers with seniors and their families is what we do. Your entire world has been about taking care of others. Let us take care of you. Seniornicity is a one-of-a-kind elite referral service exclusively for seniors. Head to seniornicity.com and sign up to join.
Seniornicity. Welcome to the Senior Advisors Podcast presented by Seniornicity, and I am your host, Simone Kelly, founder and president of Seniornicity. And today we are exploring the world of senior placement advisors. And what better person to have with us than the pioneer of the industry and senior placement, Angela Olea. Angela Olea started AOL 20 plus years ago after working as an RN in hospitals. Realizing through experiences in the hospitals, there was a void needed to be filled. And she chose to take that leap of faith and start AOL to fill that void. Welcome, Angela. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Love to be here today and explore all things placement. So thanks for having me.
Oh, no, we're super honored. Thank you for taking the time. One of the major questions that I have is, what is a senior placement advisor? What do they do? How can they help our customers at Seniornicity?
Sure. Senior placement advisor is really a senior advocate. They work with the families from that time of crisis. And it's always a time of crisis. We don't get a call when things are going well. It's when things have gone wrong, there's been a decline, and we get a phone call. So a senior advisor is really taking a complex situation and really break it into step-by-step process that takes a person's frustration and really helps them navigate through all of the different options, whether it's placing in an assisted living, memory care, independent living, or getting resources in their own home to remain as independent as possible. So we're really an information, all things surrounding that senior's health and their living situation.
That is pretty incredible. How did you come up with this idea of senior placement?
Yeah, that really was something that frustration turned to inspiration. Working as a bedside nurse at primarily with seniors in what we call snowbirds in Arizona. So we have a very high ratio of elderly population that are at least 2,000 miles plus away from their closest family members, and we would frequently. As we would discharge, they would come in for falls, medication, mismanagement, etc. And we would discharge, and I would see the senior come back, bounce back to the hospital 24 hours later, 48 hours later, a week later. Within that 30 days, that reoccurrence of readmission was something that I found very frightening. That the resources, we did our part in the hospital, but there was a gap that was causing this cycle to reoccur. And I really began to dive deep with discharge planners and with the social workers and finding out what happens after they leave my world of the hospital. Walk me through. And the questions that I asked, I really was baffled at some of the responses, and it's no reflection on the nurses or the discharge planners or social workers. What it was is that their world were the information that was brought to them. They weren't going out into the community, going exploring any of these options. And so as I began to ask more questions, each question led me further and further outside of the hospital and really saying, oh my gosh, there is a huge opportunity here to be that senior's advocate and to fill that gap and bring these resources to the social workers and informed information so that they truly have at their fingertips safe options, know what the options are, and avoid those recurrent readmissions.
That's fascinating. I would have never thought that that was something that could come about from working in a hospital. I thought once you leave the hospital, you're like, okay, you're fine, you're home, you're all well because you're out of the hospital. And seems to me that even more recently now too, people are leaving the hospital a lot sooner than what we would expect in the past. So having that kind of service available to people is really, really important. The question, though, in regards to hospitals, I know that obviously working in the hospital environment, do people only call senior placement when they're coming out of the hospital, or can they do it for like active living, like fun, like, hey, look, I don't want to live at home anymore. My kids don't come as often as I would like. So, they want to go out, they want to have Thanksgiving with their friends and everybody else that they're around their own age. And, maybe not be in such a big facility, let's say, like the Brookdales or something like that. Maybe they want to be in a smaller facility with just 5 people that they can build a relationship with and be active with. I mean, does it have to be that they have Alzheimer's or some incredible ailment that they're going to need more care? Can they help with that type of assistance and finding those places for them?
Yeah, great question. Really, it is something that a senior advisor, senior placement advisor, really has that in-depth knowledge. They do a detailed intake with the family and to discover, really develop a profile of the individual, their mom, dad. Typically, it's the adult daughter, um, or daughter-in-law that is in that key, but often, and more frequently in the last few years, the sons have really been part of that as well. But sitting eh, with that adult child, navigating what is the best options, and sometimes it can be loneliness. Sometimes it can be mom or dad aren't making healthy meals, and they're not getting that socialization, and they're starting to see a decline. And so, what you described is what one of the things that a senior advisor does is really navigate who is mom or dad. What were they like? What are you seeing that's causing you this concern? And how do we solve problems? And that's what we do is really analyze that situation. And so we've got from very independent communities that the people still drive, but their maintenance is being cared for. They can go down for meals. They may have a kitchen if they want to cook, but they've got a dining room where a restaurant style dining room. They've got activities. They've got trips that outings that are available to them, all the way to what you described. It could be a small intimate setting where they sit family style in a home that has 24-hour licensed care because maybe going into a big community is not the best option. And so um, there's over 56,000 options in the United States.
Wow.
It is an abundance, and that's why it's so important, to really to have to work with a seasoned expert to sift through, really narrow down what are the options, and then ruling out what you don't like to know what you do like, because oftentimes it's the first that they're going through this journey.
Like one of the biggest I guess questions I have in regards to and a lot of my friends and colleagues have had has been very difficult to get into facilities and see these facilities, whether they're small or even know one of those 56,000 facilities around the nation. Like, how do you know where to go? Where to go? I mean, I've called before and it seemed the resident answered the phone and said, call back, on Monday, call back on this day. I'm like, whoa, okay, I'll call back. And then I think about it, I think, how are we going to make it easier for seniors and their families to actually view? So you go through their budget, what they can afford. Can the senior and their family easily get into these places by using a senior placement advisor? Whereas when they do it on their own, it's so much more difficult, it seems, to get a hold of somebody that can walk them through the facility, show them the different things that they need and what they want to see within their future.
Yeah, a senior advisor certainly with assisted living locators, we've got the different communities and the different care options on speed dial. So one of the biggest things that a biggest asset that we provide are really focusing the time, effort, and energy on the most important things. And we're going to look at budget. We're not going to show them something that they can't afford. They may not be aware of what even the range of payments are. We're going to talk with them about how long will their funds last? Because some communities, if your funds run out, you're going to have to move. And so if there's other communities that if their funds deplete, if you've already been part of that community, you get to stay and work with a community on state funds. So there's all kinds of options with that. And so when we narrow down the selection and help them not call through the phone book A to Z, um, we're going to narrow that down and either schedule the appointment for them to go on their own if that's their choice, uh, tour with them, um, or they can go and we can schedule the appointment and have them go place to place. So it's as hands-on as they want us to be or as hands-off as they want us to be. And typically we can narrow down those choices to 3 to 5 choices. And if those still aren't, again, sometimes it takes seeing what you don't like to know what you do like. If those 3 to 5 choices, if they've gone to 1 or 2 and they're just like, wow, this is a beautiful facility, but my mom she was a homemaker her whole life. She would be absolutely intimidated by going into this big dining room and having to sit with, a lot of people, etc. She needs a smaller setting. And so by going into those places, we're able to say, great feedback, let's do this. Here's some different options and really again navigating what's the best fit for them from the care, the budget, the socialization, now, and help them explore, what does the future also look like? So can they age in place, or are we looking at a change from being at that independent community, driving to being in a setting where they've got 24-hour hands-on assistance right there?
It's extremely convenient. I know wasting time on the phone trying to set up appointments for seniors and their families in a time that they need it is it could really cause people to make rash decisions and not really think it through because they're only getting through to maybe one facility or one place that they can look at because the rest have not had the ability to get back to them. Do you also check on beds? I know there's been what I've seen in the past, and from colleagues, they've said that there's no beds available. When are those beds available? When can we have a room available? Is that something that the senior placement advisor would go over with the family on a different time frame? Is it better to start earlier than later so that you're not stuck in a place where, oh my gosh, I know you love this place, but they don't have room for you until February of 2025, right? When would be the best time for them to start considering using a senior placement advisor?
If they picked up the phone, if they've started that search online, that is a critical time. Something has triggered, there is a trigger, and something has triggered that outreach. And 99.9% of the time, that senior is not going to get stronger, healthier, and more independent. It's going to be a cycle. So if it occurred one time, the probability of it occurring or having a decline from that point going forward is significant. 80% of the people that have had a fall within that first year, they're going to need some type of whether they get it or not, they should get some type of care, support services. And so that first trigger, what we say is it's better to have a plan and not need it rather than need it, not have it. And so mom's fine. She got lost. She was driving. She got lost. She thought she put the foot on the brake. She put it on the gas. She got in a small fender bender. She left something on the stove and fell asleep. And we had a small house fire. It could be any number of crises. She forgot that she can't find her medications, or she's taken too many, not enough, can't safely get to the doctor, she's not feeding herself. There's so many different things. And so one of the early what we try to do is say, let's get out and take a look right away. And even if you're not ready, it's let's get a contingency plan and find several places that you feel comfortable with and that you would have if and when something occurs when the time is right, you have that. And so that's a critical part, and that's the hardest piece because they think if they get out there, they're going to have to make a decision. But what that does is it gets them over their fear. Um, and the next way of easing into that, if getting them out and taking a look, even if they're not ready to move, one of the things we talk about is respite and letting mom or dad try it out for a weekend, for a week, and exploring what would this be like. Um, and so we've got a lot of different, it is something that only in rare situations where if you've got a hospital or you've got somebody in rehab where they're being discharged today, tomorrow, a week from now, those are where it's game time. You have to make a decision. If going home independently is not an option. But if they're still in their own home, this is where it's get them out there, take a look, and then if they do get a fall, they go into the hospital and they've got that option right there. They've got those three properties that been provided that option.
Yeah, I think that's incredible because when I look back and I think of what friends have told me or colleagues have told me is my mom doesn't want to go or my dad doesn't want to go. They want to be in their home. And then the minute they get into a facility they like that they chose, they're like, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm having the time of my life, or I'm having the care that that I'm not, I can sleep at night now knowing that there's somebody there for me. So that's actually really good advice. I'd love that. One of the questions, obviously, the next question is going to be cost. Who pays generally for the senior placement advisor? Because obviously this service is remarkable. So they have to obviously be paid for their services, their knowledge, the 56,000 places they can look at. And I'm sure they have to go view these homes and they have to know what ranking they are what is the availability there. I mean, there's just a lot of work that goes into senior placement and advisory. So who pays for that cost? Because that's something I know everybody really, because it sounds great, but I don't know if I want to pay for all that. So who is the actual payer of that?
So, and again, this is a great question, and part of this goes to back to my nursing background. As a nurse, you don't accept tips. You don't get money. Your fees are paid by the hospital, who was paid by insurances. And so, launching 20 plus years ago, assisted living placement, I didn't want that transactional activity with the senior and their family. And so we negotiated with the providers that were in our network that if and when a senior chooses their community, that we would get paid by that community for really understanding all about that property and how they function, who's a good fit for them and who's not a good fit, keeping it a free service to seniors and their families. And again, that came from the nurse and not wanting that to be part of it. So that is, I love that part about what it is that we do. It's not transactional at all with the families. And we're not gonna, if they can afford this price, we're not gonna show them something that they can't afford. It's like buying a car. You're gonna, if you want a Rolls Royce, you're not gonna be getting a Honda Civic. Your budget is what your budget is. So we really work and try to work within and help people find money to help pay for care. And oftentimes, actually, we can even negotiate the rate lower if they're looking at two communities and they love one of the communities, really love it. But maybe there's a $300 difference between that community that's closer, that kind of checks those boxes. There's one that's $300 less expensive. What we can do is go to the one that's $300 more and say they really love your community, but they can't afford it. And if it comes to the money, they're going to have to choose this other option. Is there anything that you can do to match what the other community has? And oftentimes they will say that, absolutely, especially if they've got vacancies, they're really willing to work with or relook at that person's situation to do that. So, oftentimes, a senior living advisor can help advocate in multiple ways to get the best for that client and their family.
Well, that's really good news because people do not have the extra, or even if they did, would they spend the extra money to get that type of professional help in order to get where they want to go? I mean, imagine in my world, time is money for everybody. And especially when we get older, our time is worth a lot of money, almost an infinite amount of money. And if we're looking at it that way and saying, gosh, I could pay, 10,000 for the senior advisor. I don't know, maybe we'll just spend our time the next 6 months looking ourselves and really not getting anywhere, not and getting frustrated. And then again, back to that brass decision from the very beginning where you're just frustrated and just pick one mom or pick one dad. We've already seen 300 of them. We don't want to see anymore. It looks like number 15 was the one. So that's actually really, really good news. I love that. And genius on your part for coming up with that and working with the facilities to get you paid and get the senior advisors paid. So you don't have that, like you said, the transactional between the two of you. Because when it comes to money, it can drive a little bit of negativity between a relationship. And you do have to have a very open relationship with the people you're working with. And they don't feel like, well, I don't want to call them because it's going to cost me more money. It's hourly. Or I don't want to call them and tell them this because it's going to cost me more money. So that's really an incredible idea you came up with. That's unbelievable. So I have asked the questions that I had the most, and what my colleagues and people have sent me. They've had questions on senior placement advisors. The question I have for you is, what did we miss? Because I know there is something that we missed that is like probably bigger than any question I ever asked you because you've been in the industry so long. I know you're scratching your head thinking, what she needs to ask this question. So I'm not going to ask you that question because I don't know. Tell me what is the question and the answer, what I did not ask you in this time.
I would say that, you asked about when to call a senior advisor, some of the cost and things like that. I would say the one thing we really didn't is the elephant in the room where sometimes the adult child has to parent the parent. And, really being that, recognizing that the relationship with the parent and with the child and their parent, that's a precious thing. And when you have to parent your parent and be the caregiver for your parent, it really changes that dynamic. And so what we try to do is, you know, if an adult child finds himself in that role where they're parenting their parent and really frustrated that these roles are reversed and they're in that situation, that's really a great time to explore how do we get back and recapture that parent-child relationship and get that back and get back to a healthy place. So, when is it time? When you're parenting your parent and you're experiencing that frustration, reach out and we can be a phenomenal support in providing solutions to that. You don't have to go through it alone. This is a process and it doesn't have to be overnight. It is something that, breaking it down into bite-sized people or bite-sized pieces and working with professionals can make the difference. That experience, it can really make a huge difference in the lives of seniors and their families.
So you're almost a liaison between the parents and the adult children, correct? Like you're kind of hearing both sides and smoothing it over and giving them different options where they don't feel so overwhelmed. That's the one thing that we did with Seniornicity when we built it was that the overwhelming amount of pressure put onto families during this. We want to make it seamless, and what you're talking about is exactly what we're looking for. So that's pretty amazing, Angela. I really appreciate you taking that time to discuss that. Thank you for being a part of our podcast here, Angela. We really, really appreciate it. And to all our viewers out there, if you want more information on senior placement advisors, or you think it's time to maybe start, exploring this part of it for a loved one, you can go to seniornicity.com. It's seniornicity.com and look up the senior placement tab, and you'll find all of our nationwide senior placement advisors there. Also, if you like assisted living locators, which we obviously do, you can go directly to assistedlivinglocators.com, spell it out, assistedlivinglocators.com, and find a senior advisor right there today. Thank you guys so much for your time. And Angela, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Seniornicity.